The sky bled silver that night, and the earth held its breath. It began in the quiet corners, the flicker of shadows lingering too long, the prickling sense of being watched from empty rooms. Whispers threaded through dreams, fragments of a language no one could place, syllables that dissolved like smoke upon waking. People wrote it off as fatigue, the ache of modern life. But in the cracks between seconds, something older than cities, older than names, stirred. For eons, it had been content to watch, to study the strange, fragile creatures who built their worlds atop bones and myths, unaware of what lay just beyond their sight. But boundaries, like promises, are made to be tested. The first breach was subtle, a child's imaginary friend who refused to fade, a mirror that reflected a room not quite their own. Then came the hollows, places where light bent wrong, where time stuttered, leaving behind a scent like ozone and rust. Still, humanity shrugged. Denial, after all, was a survival instinct. Yet the signs grew bolder, birds migrated in impossible patterns, clocks in distant cities chimed in unison. Though their gears were still, strangers claimed to dream the same towering spire, half buried in a black sea, its gates groaning open. Scientists called it mass hysteria, the devout called it prophecy. Both were wrong. It wasn't fear that finally made the world take notice. It was the silence. The moment every screen, every voice, every engine halted, as if the planet itself had paused mid-breath. And in that stillness, a question echoed, unspoken but deafening: what if we were never alone here? By the time the stars reappeared, cold and sharp as knife points, it was already too late to run. Chapter 1. The ash tasted like guilt. Drake Hale flicked his Zippo open, closed open again, the metallic snick cutting through the growl of wind, tearing at Jakarta's skeletal skyline. Below the rooftop where he stood, the city was a graveyard of half-melted steel and concrete tumors, monuments to the bioplague wars, where entire blocks had been cauterized by fusion fire to stop the spread. Fire purifies, they'd told him. Fire saves. He'd believed it once. Now he just believed in the weight of the lighter in his palm, the ritual of flame conjured and smothered, the only prayer left to a man who'd traded his soul for a colonel's star, and a body count. The call came as the monsoon hit. Rain slashed sideways, stinging his face with needles of acid and fresh water, nature's latest prank, another mutation from the ozone scars. His burner phone buzzed against his ribs, the number blocked. He answered anyway. They're declaring war, Hale. The voice was General Sato's, all gravel and gunpowder, feathered pricks from the Perseus arm, calling us weak. Drake watched a tendril of smoke rise from a distant landfill fire, its orange glow smeared by rain. Weak. The word clung. Humanity had clawed through nuclear winters, gene-hacked plagues, and cities drowned by rogue tides. Weakness wasn't the problem. Mercy was. Mercy had kept them from glassing the Martian secessionists. Mercy had let the Europa colonies walk. Now mercy was a luxury, and Earth was fresh out. They want a surrender ceremony, Sato said. One diplomat. You. The lighter flared. Drake held the flame to the storm, watching it writhe. Why me? Because you're the only bastard mean enough to burn a galaxy to make a point. Click. The line died. Drake pocketed the phone, thumb tracing the initials engraved on the Zippo ERH, long cold in an unmarked grave. Elena had hated the cigars. You'll burn your lungs out, she'd laughed, swatting his hand as he lit one at their wedding reception. The memory was a shard sharp and sweet. He'd stopped going to her memorial after year 3. Graves were for the living, and the dead didn't care about smoke. They gave him a suit, crisp and black, and a titanium briefcase with a keypad that beeped like a fetal heartbeat. The nuke inside was small, elegant, a neutronium core wrapped in stabilizers. 1 kiloton, the text said. Just enough to crack a starship's spine. Drake dressed in a bunker deep beneath what was left of Geneva, the air thick with the tang of recycled oxygen and dread. A mirror showed him a stranger, hollow cheeks, eyes like slag glass, the scar along his jaw where shrapnel had kissed him in Caracas. He looked like a man already half ghost, a walking cinder. General Sato met him at the hangar, her uniform starched to knife edges. Behind her, the Tal's Har envoy ship loomed, a obsidian dagger wreathed in violet plasma, its hull shimmering like oil on water. The aliens had declined to land, too fragile, the message said. Your atmosphere is quaint. Play their game, Sato muttered, handing him a dossier. Grovel, beg, whatever. Just get close enough to plant the package. Drake scanned the file. The Tal's Har Imperium, avian humanoids, hyper-advanced, nesting in accretion disks of neutron stars. Photos showed feather-plated warriors with eyes like molten gold, their plumage iridescent, fractal patterned. Evolutionary notes mentioned pyrophobia. Their homeworld's atmosphere had been helium-rich, non-combustible. Fire was a myth to them, a fairy tale. He almost laughed. The shuttle ride was silent, pressurized, the kind of quiet that pressed against his eardrums. Drake stared at the briefcase, the keypad glowing green. Armed, he'd carried worse. Caracas had been a dirty bomb in a schoolyard. Kids playing hopscotch over primed plastic. He'd burned the whole block. Saved the city. Lost his marriage. The Tal's Har flagship hung in high orbit, a obsidian spire ringed by humming drones. Docking was automated, magnetic clamps shuddering as the airlock sealed. The interior was a cathedral of shadows, gravity shifting unnervingly, light as lunar dust one step, crushing as Jupiter the next. Tal's Har guards flanked him, their talons clicking on the deck, feathers rippling with colors unseen on Earth. They smelled like ozone and iron. No weapons, their leader had insisted. Drake left the nuke in the shuttle, he kept the Zippo. The throne room was a geodesic nightmare, walls curved like a raptor's ribcage, lit by pulsing bioluminescent veins. High Flockmaster Vrakiel awaited him on a perch of twisted black metal, wings folded tight, his plumage a cascade of indigo and crimson. Translucent eyelids flicked sideways, reptilian. Ambassador Hale. The voice was synthesized, guttural, the translator implant in Drake's neck buzzing. You come to surrender. Drake reached for a cigar, Havana's last harvest, smuggled from a vault in Havana's ruins, and paused. Protocol. Decorum. Elena's ghost raised an eyebrow. Since when do you care? He bit the tip, spat it, and lit the Zippo. The Tal's Har recoiled. A hiss slithered through the chamber, feathers bristling. Vrakiel's crest flattened. What is this? Ritual. Negotiation. Drake inhaled, the smoke coiling in his lungs. You declared war on a species that's been at war with itself since we crawled out of magma. You think we're weak. We invented weakness. We weaponized it. The Flockmaster's talons flexed. Your pity disgusts. You spare foes. You mourn. Mourning's what you do when you've got nothing left to burn. The cigar tip glowed. Drake stepped closer, ash drifting. Vrakiel's plumage rippled, fractal patterns swirling. Pride, anger, fear. The air stank of ionized metal. Your terms are rejection. Vrakiel snarled. We will feast on your. A spark leapt. Later, Drake would blame the unstable gravity, the dry air, the arrogance of creatures who'd never known combustion. The ember kissed a feather on Vrakiel's wingtip. It caught. Fire raced through the Flockmaster's plumage, fractal patterns becoming fractal flames. The scream was unearthly, a shriek that cracked the throne room's glassine walls. Tal's Har guards scattered, keening, as the inferno spread, feathers igniting like paper lanterns, their evolutionary terror made flesh. Drake froze, cigar forgotten, the lighter hot in his grip. Fire purifies, the generals had said. Fire saves, he'd believed. But this was neither. This was an accident, a joke, a punchline written in bone and plasma. Chaos erupted, alarms wailed. Drake stumbled back, heat searing his face, and saw it, a control panel blinking on the far wall, gravity stabilizers. He ran, lighter clutched like a crucifix, Elena's voice howling in his skull. You'll burn your lungs out, you idiot. Maybe, but first he'd burn a path home. Chapter 2. The flames had a voice. They sang in crackling soprano, a chorus of hungers older than stars, devouring the high flockmaster's plumage like a hymn. Drake stumbled backward, the heat blistering his cheeks, the lighter still clenched in his fist, a tiny sun-gone supernova in his palm. Brachial screams curdled the air, a sound that belonged to no throat, no language, just raw animal terror. The Tal's guards scattered, wings beating in frantic arcs, their iridescent feathers reflecting the firelight, in kaleidoscopic panic. They were beautiful, Drake thought, in the way a lightning strike was beautiful, lethal, primal, a force that refused to be caged. He moved without thinking, muscle memory, carved into him by 100 firefights in 100 collapsing cities. The control panel glowed ahead, its interface a tangle of alien glyphs, pulsing amber and violet. Gravity here was a drunk's promise. One moment his boots stuck to the floor like magnets, the next he was floating, weightless, the briefcase nuke tumbling lazily in the shuttle behind him, forgotten. The flames followed, dancing along spilled fuel lines, feeding on oxygen-rich vents. The Tal's had built their ship to survive neutron star tides. Not this, not fire. A Talon seized his shoulder, spinning him. A warrior loomed, plumage singed to charcoal, eyes molten with rage. Its beak snapped, inches from his face, reeking of coppery and burnt sugar. Drake swung the Zippo, not as a weapon but a totem, its flame guttering in the artificial gale. The Tal's recoiled, hissing, wings flaring, a reflex, instinct deeper than courage. In that heartbeat of hesitation, Drake slammed his elbow into its throat, felt cartilage crunch, and ran. The corridors twisted, a labyrinth of obsidian and bioluminescent veins that throbbed like exposed nerves. Alarms warbled, a sound like glass shattering in reverse. He followed the screams, the smoke, the stench of scorched keratin. Fire was a living thing now, a predator stalking the ship, herding the Tal's into panicked flocks. Drake wondered if this was how the dinosaurs had felt, watching the asteroid's glow crest the horizon. He found the gravity stabilizer chamber by accident. A sealed door, its edges rimmed with frost, trembled as something inside thrashed. Drake pried it open with a fire axe ripped from an emergency panel. Even aliens had protocols, and the cold hit him like a fist. The room was a cathedral of machinery, crystalline coils, humming in a latticework that defied geometry. At its center floated a sphere of condensed light, captive and seething, a miniature star, maybe, or a fragment of the neutron disk they nested in. The Tal's power source, their god perhaps. A shadow moved, a young warrior, smaller than the others, feathers still edged with downy gray, huddled behind a console. Its talons clutched a blade curved like a crescent moon. Trembling, Drake froze. The creature stared at him, then at the fire spreading in the corridor beyond, its translucent eyelids blinking rapidly. Fear, not of him, of the flames. Go on, Drake rasped, gesturing with the axe. Stab me, earn your wings, kid. The Tal's hesitated, its plumage flushed indigo, shame, and the blade lowered an inch. A hum vibrated the air, the sphere's light dimming as smoke coiled into the chamber. Drake coughed, tasting acid and ash. Time was a noose. He turned to the stabilizer controls, a console of touch-sensitive runes. No manuals, no translations, just guesswork. He pressed a glyph, the floor lurched, gravity flipping, and he slammed into the ceiling. Breath knocked loose. The young warrior squawked, tumbling, wings flapping uselessly. Drake clawed his way to the console, inverted, and punched another glyph. Gravity normalized, dropping them both. The Tal's landed in a crouch, blade skittering away. It made no move to retrieve it. Smart, Drake muttered.
He slammed his palm onto the console, and the sphere flared. The entire ship groaned, metal screaming as artificial gravity spasmed. Somewhere, a hull breach hissed, oxygen fleeing into the void. The fire dimmed, starved, then roared back as atmosphere stabilized. Drake laughed, a raw, broken sound. Fire and gravity, dancing. Elena would have called it a metaphor. The young warrior chirped, a sound almost questioning. Drake glanced at it. You wanna live? Fix this. He gestured at the console. The Tal's heart tilted its head, then scuttled forward, talons tapping a rapid sequence. The sphere's light steadied. The ship stopped shuddering. Silence, save for the distant crackle of flames. Drake studied the creature. No older than a recruit, he guessed. Its eyes weren't molten gold like the others. They were flecked with green, like moss on a grave. Kael'vor, it rasped, tapping its chest. The translator implant struggled with the name, rendering it guttural. Human. Drake, he said, tapping his own. Kael'vor trilled, a sound like a broken flute, and pointed at the fire. Vrakiel, Korea. I barbecued your boss. Sorry about that. The Tal's heart flinched but didn't attack. Instead it bent, picking up its blade, and sliced open a panel in the console. Wires spilled, glowing faintly. Kael'vor severed 3, and the sphere dimmed. The gravity eased, settling into something bearable. A truce. Why? Drake asked. Kael'vor's feathers rippled, pattern shifting. A language, maybe. It pointed at the flames, then at Drake's lighter. Taris, Vecta, fire of death, but also survival. Ni moved through the ship like ghosts. Kael'vor leading, Drake limping behind. His suit was torn, blood seeping from a gash in his thigh. The fire had spread, eating through decks, but the Tal's heart were adapting, sealing bulkheads, venting oxygen. Corpses littered the halls, some smoldering, others crushed by debris. Drake tried not to look at their faces. The shuttle bay was a graveyard of wreckage. The Tal's Har had bombed their own docks to contain the blaze. Drake's shuttle was intact, barely, its hull scorched. He lunged for it, but Kael'vor grabbed his arm, talons pricking skin. Naresh, it pointed upward. The ceiling shuddered. A drone swarm descended, metallic and silent, their carapaces bristling with plasma cutters. Drake cursed, diving behind a cargo crate, as the drones opened fire. Kael'vor screeched, wings unfurling, and leapt, not at the drones, but at a control panel. Talons flew, slicing wires. The drones stalled, twitching. Not bad, kid. Drake breathed. The shuttle's hatch hissed open. Inside the briefcase, nuke beeped patiently. Drake hesitated. The plan was to plant it, die a martyr, let Earth's generals spin his corpse into propaganda. But now, Kael'vor hovered at the bay's edge, watching him, waiting. You could come, Drake said, knowing the offer was futile. The Tal's Har shook its head, plumage flushing sunset orange. Saro? It pointed to the burning ship, then to its chest. Kael'vor. Shartal. Duty. Honor. Drake understood. He'd carried that weight once. Still did. In the Zippo's engraving. In the ghost of a woman who'd loved him before the ashes. He tossed Kael'vor his lighter. The Tal's Har caught it, talons careful, and stared at the flame, as if it held the secrets of the universe. Don't drop it, Drake said. The hatch sealed. The shuttle engines whined, and as he launched into the void, he glimpsed Kael'vor through the viewport, a small gray feathered figure standing amid the inferno. Lighter held aloft, like a lantern. Earth's stratosphere greeted him with acid rain and static. The comms exploded, generals demanding reports, politicians screeching for victory speeches. Drake ignored them. He opened a private channel, typing coordinates into the nuke's keypad. Elena's grave. The display blinked. He hesitated. The war wasn't over. The Tal's Har would return, angrier, wiser. But for now, the skies were quiet. He disarmed the nuke.
Chapter 3. The Phoenix feathers arrived in a coffin-sized crate, its surface etched with Tal's hieroglyphs that shimmered like oil on water. Drake stared at it in the hangar's sulfur-yellow light, the air thick with the static of recent rain. Earth's governments had debated its opening for weeks, safeguards, scans, speeches about historic partnerships, but he knew what lay inside, not a weapon, a confession. The Tal's surrender had been written in the ash of their own hubris, and this was their penance, a fistful of stardust wrapped in quantum filaments, a power source that could ignite suns or light a child's birthday candle. Fire again. Always fire. General Sato stood beside him, her gloved hand resting on the crate. They say 1 gram of this could power Manhattan for a century, or burn it down in a second, Drake said. His breath fogged the air, the hangar's heaters struggling against the Himalayan winter. Outside, the peaks were jagged teeth against a bruised sky. The monastery-turned-bunker huddled in their shadow. Monks still chanted here, their voices a low drone beneath the clatter of drones and soldiers. The council wants it weaponized. Fusion warheads, orbital grids. Sato's voice was a scalpel. Precise, cold. You'll endorse the project. Publicly. Drake lit a cigar. The Zippo's flame steady despite the altitude. The smoke coiled upward. A gray ghost dancing with the shadows. Or we court-martial you for insubordination. For stealing a nuke. For burning an alien armada without orders. He laughed. A dry sound that hurt his lungs. You wanted a show. I gave you one. You gave us a punchline. Sato turned. Her face a mask of frost and fatigue. The Tal's are regrouping. They'll be back. We need this. Need. The word hung between them. Brittle as ice. Drake had heard it before. In Caracas. In Jakarta. In the choked whispers of medics staunching shrapnel wounds. Need justified everything. Burn a block. Burn a city. Burn a species. He left her there. The crate unopened. And descended into the bunker's belly. The elevator groaned. Its cables singing a dirge. And for a moment he was back on the Tal's ship. Gravity lurching. Flames howling. Calvor's face flickered in his memory. The young warrior's moss-flecked eyes. The way it had cradled the Zippo like a relic. Mercy as a taboo. Mercy as terror. The lab was a crypt of steel and holograms. Technicians in hazmat suits dissecting a phoenix feather under lasers. The feather itself was a sliver of darkness. A void that drank the light, its edges flickering with phantom flames. Dr. Chen, her hair streaked with gray and defiance, nodded at him. It's not matter, not energy, something. Between. She zoomed a hologram. Fractal patterns swirling. It tap dances on quantum strings. You could power a city, or rip a hole in space-time. What's it want? Drake asked. Chen blinked. Want? Fire's got a personality. This thing's no different. He reached out, not touching the feather. It hummed. A sound that vibrated in his molars. It's a tool ambassador. So's a matchstick. Depends who holds it. He left her frowning. The feather's hum following him like a curse. The dream came as it always did. Elena in her apron. Flour dusting her wrists. Laughing as smoke poured from their oven. You're supposed to bake the damn bread. Drake, not cremate it. Their Brooklyn apartment had been small, warm, alive with the smell of rosemary and burnt crust. She'd taught him fire's gentler arts. Simmering sauces, caramelizing onions, the slow kiss of coals on brisket. Then the wildfires came. The state said controlled burn, but the wind shifted. The apartment, the oven, her laughter, all ash. He woke in a cold sweat, the bunker's silence pressing like a pillow. The Zippo sat on his nightstand, gleaming dully. He dressed without lighting it. The message arrived at dawn, a single line, unsigned. Smoke and iron BBQ. 9th and Main. Come hungry. The address led him to a crater. 9th and Main was a fissure in the earth, half filled with rainwater, and the skeletons of old billboards. A food truck crouched at its edge, rusted and defiant, its paint scorched by heat and time. A man in a grease-stained apron tended a grill, the smoke weaving into the morning mist. You hail? The man didn't look up, flipping a rack of ribs with practiced ease. Depends who's asking. Miles. He jerked his chin at the truck. Heard you're the reason the sky's quiet. Drake eyed the grill. The coals glowed perfect embers. No fusion core or plasma feed, just wood and patience. You're cooking with charcoal, only way. Miles sliced a rib, the meat falling apart in smoky surrender. The council took my fusion permits, said my methods were primitive. He spat, like they'd know a good brisket if it bit him. The first bite was a revelation, smoke and sweet, the crust caramelized, the fat rendered to silk. Drake closed his eyes. Elena's ghost sighed in his ear. See? Not everything needs to burn. Why'd you call me here? Miles pointed his tongs at the crater. They dropped a Talshar drone here last week, some kinda sonic weapon. Took out the block. He flipped the ribs. We rebuilt. Always do. But folks are scared. They need, I dunno, a win. Something that ain't a weapon. Drake studied the man. Calloused hands. Steady gaze. The quiet fury of someone who'd fought the world with a spatula. A kindred spirit. He made the call that night. The phoenix feather crate heavy in the truck's bed. Miles stared at the void sliver. Then at his grill. You're kidding. It's a power source. Clean. Infinite. Drake tapped the feather. Hook it up. See what happens. The feather hissed. Tendrils of darkness lacing the grill. The coals blazed. Not with fire, but with a light that cast no shadows. A neutron star's heartbeat trapped in steel. Miles slid a brisket into the heat. It cooked in minutes. The smoke sweet and alien. The meat tender as a psalm. Hell. Miles whispered. We could feed the whole damn city. Yeah, Drake said. We could. Mile Fall found him at the crater's edge. 2 days later. The Talshar wore a human parka. The sleeves torn to accommodate wings. His plumage dulled to a soldier's gray. He'd grown thinner. His eyes sharp with exile. Drake. The translator mangled his name, but the relief was clear. You shouldn't be here. Shalton. Vecta. Calver gestured at the food truck, where a line of hungry locals coiled into the street. Shame. Survival. They sat on the crater's rim, passing a flask of Miles's homemade bourbon. Calver choked on the first sip, feathers fluffing, then took another. Your people coming back? Drake asked. Vrakiel. Reshtal. The flockmaster lives. The Talshar tapped his chest, where a scar gleamed. Calver Narish. Outcast. Because you spared me. Because he struggled, wings flexing, saw, fire burns, fire. He gestured at the truck. The crowd. Feeds. Drake let the silence linger, the bourbon warm in his veins. The phoenix feather hummed in the grill, a counterpoint to the murmuring crowd. A child laughed. Grease smeared on her cheeks. Her mother's eyes no longer haunted. Stay, Drake said. Calver tilted his head. Help us. Show your people we're not weak. The Talshar stared at the feather, then at the Zippo in Drake's hand. He trilled, low and resonant, and plucked a gray feather from his wing, pressed it into Drake's palm. Taris, Vecta, fire, life. They came for him at dawn. Soldiers in black, their rifles silent, their faces carved from stone. Drake didn't resist. He stood in the crater, watching Miles serve breakfast to a line of factory workers, the feathers light painting the smoke in gold. General Sato met him at the bunker. You gave godhood to a chef, better a chef than a general. The trial lasted minutes, the verdict treason, the sentence death. They let him smoke a final cigar. He chose Elena's favorite Havana, bitter and sweet. The Zippo flared, and for a heartbeat, he saw her in the flame, flower on her wrists. Laughing. The commotion started before the firing squad raised their rifles. A roar from the crowd. A Talshar's shriek. Calver landed in the courtyard. Wings spread. A dozen phoenix-powered grills strapped to his back. Their light blinded the soldiers. The heat non-lethal but unbearable. Miles's voice boomed over a loudspeaker. Try the brisket, you bastards. It's to die for. Drake laughed. He laughed as Calver snatched him skyward, as the bunker shrank below, as the world blurred into smoke and starlight. They landed at Smoke and Iron. The crowd parted, not in fear, but awe. Miles handed him a plate. Eat. You look like hell. The brisket was perfect. The feather's glow warmed his bones. In the distance sirens wailed.
But here, now, there was only smoke and laughter, and the fragile, furious hope of a species too stubborn to die. Elena's ghost smiled. Not bad, pyromaniac. Not bad at all. Chapter 4. The sky over Smoke and Iron BBQ was the color of charcoal and honey, dusk bleeding into the neon glow of the food truck's Phoenix-powered grill. Drake sat on an overturned crate, the last of the brisket grease cooling on his fingers, watching the crowd thin. They came hungry and left full, their laughter weaving with the smoke, a fragile tapestry of normalcy, in a world that had forgotten how to bend. Calver perched on the truck's roof, wings folded tight, his gray plumage dusted with ash. He'd taken to wearing a faded apron, the words "kiss the cook or else" stenciled in Tal's hieroglyphs. Progress, Drake figured. The arrest warrant arrived with the rain. Black cars slithered into the lot, soldiers in matte black armor fanning out, their rifles slung low but not yet raised. Drake didn't stand. He lit a cigar, the Zippo's flame steady, and inhaled the way Elena had taught him, slow, savoring the burn. Calver hissed, talons flexing, but Drake shook his head. Easy, kid. They're here for the show. General Sato emerged, her uniform pristine, her eyes glacial. She surveyed the scene, the line of locals clutching rib-stained napkins, the grill humming with captured starlight, the alien-turned sous-chef glowering from the roof. You turned a quantum singularity into a kitchen appliance. Works better than your warheads, Drake said, blowing a smoke ring. It hovered, a gray halo, before dissolving in the rain. You're still a traitor, and you're still a lousy dinner guest. He nodded at the soldiers. Gonna shoot me in front of the kids, Sato. Bad for the brand. A toddler waddled past, clutching a cornbread muffin, oblivious. Sato's jaw tightened. She'd always hated collateral damage. The Talshar fleet's gone dark, withdrawn. They left a message. She tossed a holodisc into the grill. It sizzled, projecting High Flock Master Vrakiel's scarred visage above the flames. The Talshar's plumage was half gone, replaced by synth-skin grafts, his voice a rasp. We misjudged your resilience. A Deathworld's fire cannot be conquered. It can only be respected. The projection bowed, a stiff avian motion. Do not seek us. We shall not return. The crowd murmured, fear and pride tangling. Drake crushed his cigar underfoot. So I'm a hero now. You're a liability, but the council wants a puppet, not a corpse. She flicked a medal onto the grill, a silver star etched with flames. Report to New Reykjavik. They're terraforming the permafrost, with your BBQ tech. He left the medal to melt. Tell them I'm retired. Sato turned, her silhouette sharp against the food truck's glow. You don't get to retire. You lit the match, Hale. Now tend the damn fire. The cars retreated, tail lights bleeding into the mist. Calver dropped beside him, trilling softly. Drake handed him the Zippo. Keep the home fires burning, kid. I've got a date with some icebergs. New Reykjavik was a scar on the tundra, a jagged wound where the ice had receded, leaving mud and molten rock. The Phoenix terraformers stood like obsidian monoliths, their cores pulsing with neutron energy, heat rippling the air. Drake trudged through the slush, his breath frosting, the cold gnawing at the old shrapnel in his knee. They'd given him a title, Chief Ignition Officer, and a team of engineers, who eyed him like a grenade with the pin half pulled. He worked in silence. The terraformers responded to his touch, the feather tech recognizing something in him, the pyromaniac's intimacy with destruction, the chef's patience for slow heat. At night he dreamt of Elena, not the ash-streaked nightmares of before, but quieter visions, her hands kneading dough, her voice humming off-key lullabies, the way she'd trace the scar on his jaw, and call him, my beautiful arsonist. Weeks blurred, the tundra softened, green tendrils piercing the frost. One morning, a sprout unfurled at the base of a terraformer, a stubborn improbable weed. Drake knelt, gloves caked in thawing soil, and laughed until his ribs ached. Calver found him there, wings dusted with snow, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He'd brought the grill. Missed the cold, huh? Drake said. The Tal's heart chirped, assembling the phoenix core with practiced claws. Soon the terraformers' courtyard smelled of smoked salmon and cardamom, engineers and geologists clustering around the heat. Calver hovered by the grill, his feathers puffed with pride, growling at anyone who touched the tongs. Drake watched the crowd, scientists laughing, their breath steaming in the Arctic air, the green shoot now a fistful of wild flowers. The Talshar's message echoed in his skull: respected, not feared, not defeated, seen. They came for him one last time in the spring. Not soldiers, but pilgrims, a delegation from the Martian reborn colonies, their faces gaunt but hopeful, their leader clutching a charred photo of smoke and iron. "We heard you can grow things," she said. Even there, he gave them 3 phoenix cores, and a case of Miles's bourbon. "Don't waste it on bombs." The woman hesitated. "Why help us, after what we did? Martian glass makes good fertilizer," he said, and left it at that. That night, he stood at Elena's memorial, a simple stone in what had once been California's wildfire belt, now a meadow thick with poppies. The stars were sharp here, unblinking. Calver waited at the tree line, giving him the illusion of privacy. Drake lit a cigar, the Zippo's flame reflected in the marble. "Kept my promise," he murmured. "Tried to do it right this time." The wind stirred, warm and fragrant, carrying the distant bark of a fox. He set the lighter on the stone, gleaming. "Fire's got 2 ends, Lena. One burns, the other." He didn't finish. She already knew. Ness. The final scene was pure Miles, a grand opening on Ganymede, Smoke and Iron's first off-world franchise, its grill powered by a phoenix core encased in Martian glass. The line stretched into the stars, aliens and humans elbow to elbow, drawn by the rumor of brisket that tasted like home. Drake leaned against the truck, his joints creaking, his hair gone steel gray. Calver manned the grill, his plumage now streaked with earthy greens and golds, colors the Talshar reserved for gardeners. A child, her skin dusted with Jovian frost, tugged Drake's sleeve. "Are you really the guy who burned the bird people?" He knelt. The old Zippo, a replica now, the original stayed with Elena warm in his palm. "Nah kid, I'm the guy who taught him to share the grill." She frowned. "That's not what the net feeds say." "Net feeds are overrated." He handed her a rib. "Try the sauce. It's got kick." As she scampered off, sauce on her chin, Drake watched the stars. Somewhere, the Talshar were rebuilding, their nests glowing with borrowed fire. Somewhere, Earth's oceans were rising, her forests creeping back. Somewhere, a widow in Jakarta grilled skewers for her neighbors, a phoenix core humming in her cart. Fire purifies, fire saves. He finally believed it.